खोजो खोजो खोजो. I'm sure you enjoyed every moment of that brilliant presentation. And you're enjoying every moment of watching Earth, a culture fest promoted by Z. Now, next up is a panel discussion titled as Political Biographies. Can the entire story ever be told? Let me start by introducing you to our panelists straight up. Starting with Dhaval Kulkarni. He is a Mumbai-based journalist with around 2 decades of reporting experience across brands like the Times of India, Hindustan Times, the Indian Express, New Indian Express and DNA. He has authored The Cousins Thackeray, Uddhav, Raj and the Shadow of Their Senas, and The Bawla Mother Case, Love, Lust and Crime in Colonial India. He has also penned an audiobook in Marathi for Storytel. Joining him is going to be Mr. Gautam Chintamani, who is a film historian and the author of Dark Star, The Loneliness of Being Rajesh Khanna, and Rajniti, a biography of Rajnath Singh. Along with them, please also join me in welcoming Mr. Hindol Sen Gupta, who's a multiple award-winning author of 9 best-selling books of non-fiction and fiction category. His books, being Hindu, became the first book on Hinduism in 70 years to win the Wilbur Award given by the Religion Communicators Council of America in 2018. He's a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and has been a Knight Begert Fellow at Columbia University. He's the Editor-at-Large for Fortune India and a Chevening Scholar at the University of Oxford. Along with them, we also have Mr. Ramesh Kandula. Ramesh Kandula is a journalist based in Hyderabad in a career spanning 3 decades across the media spectrum, print, television and the web. He's been associated with various organizations including Inadu, the Deccan Chronicle and the Tribune, apart from various television channels as well. Now, this session shall be moderated by Mr. Abhinav Prakash, who is an assistant professor of economics at the Shri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. He's also a bilingual columnist at the Hindustan Times, Dainik Jagran and Swarajya, focusing on the socio-economic, political and caste issues. He's fellow at the Asian Forum on Global Governance as well. This is indeed going to be another interesting session. Let's go ahead and dive straight into it.
Okay, thank you and welcome audience to this wonderful panel. Today we are going to discuss something which is a very interesting genre of literature in India and also one of the most underrated as well, which is about the political biographies. In India, if you see, we don't really write much about our political leaders. If we compare to what happens in America or Europe, we don't have different books written upon our political actors, like how many of you know about Chandrasekhar, how many of you know about Devi Lal, how many of you don't know about the political leaders of the Northeast. So this is something which we need to focus upon, and I have a very wonderful panel with me. So I'm going to start with Dhaval Kulkarni ji. The reason is that he has written a book on the Thackeray brothers, and as the politics of Maharashtra is unfolding at a very rapid pace, so I think it's best to start with Dhaval ji. Dhaval ji, my question to you is very straightforward. How do you write a political biography of the politicians who are alive and who are very much in the action? The story is developing at a very fast rate. So by the time you write your book, those informations become outdated. So how do you go about it? How do you go about capturing the dynamics of politics, personality in the political biography?
See, Abhinavji, I will like to sort of begin by telling you that in our country, the problem is that when it comes to writing history, or even with any original works in disciplines like archaeology or anthropology, is that we often tend to view personalities or events or even happenings in terms of black and white. This is regardless of the fact that the truth often lies in shades of gray. There's this also, this human tendency to seek rather easy, ephemeral and simple answers to very complex and existential questions. So this, in a sense, complicates the job of a biographer. So when it comes to analyzing the life and works of figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Pandit Nehru, Savarkar, etc., there's an attempt to brand them either as heroes or villains, with a huge gap in between. The pendulum swings either to this side or that one. There's absolutely no or very little honest middle ground to enable a very holistic and nuanced understanding of or debate around an individual, either living or dead, or even a set of events like the partition of India and the circumstances leading to it. This is very disturbing because these people may be icons or villains for us, depending on which side of the ideological divide we stand. But eventually, they were human beings with their own share of human characteristics, both good and bad. There are some aspects of these icons.
So I think we are losing Dhavalji out there. Coming to you, Gautam, and by the way, audience, Indol Sen Gupta will be joining us shortly. Gautam, you have written the biography of a film star, Rajesh Khanna, and you have also written the biography of a political star, Rajnath Singh. What is the difference between the two? I mean, approaching a film star and writing about his story, and approaching a politician and writing about his story, what changes does it make? I mean, what different approach did you take?
Hi, glad to be here. I don't think there's a very big difference between how you see a public personality when you are trying to attempt to write about their life. For me, both Mr. Rajesh Khanna and Rajnath ji are socio-political icons who have been either directly involved or been a spectator to some of the biggest changes the country witnessed post-partition and up until now. So for me to approach Rajnath Singh's life as a politician was the basic underlying factor. Yes, the social aspect of his work is slightly different from that of, say, a Rajesh Khanna or any other actor. But in the end, you're looking at personalities who have managed to leave such a big impression on their, not just their field, but also the zeitgeist at that time, that they have come to become like yardsticks. So for me, writing on Rajnath Singh was very interesting because this country is very young. We may be one of the oldest civilizations in the world, but we are the average age of our country, or at least half of the country is under 25. So many of them didn't even see things like, making an STD call from a booth or standing in lines or waiting for things. So they have no idea about something like that. And they are very far removed from, say, the emergency, which really impacted not just the political landscape of this country, but also films. So when I was writing about Rajesh Khanna, there's a significant portion that looks at how the emergency impacted cinema. Similarly, for me, the approach largely depends on the kind of life that these icons have led and the impact that they have had on people. And what is very interesting, what also you had asked Dhaval, is that it's a work in progress. So I don't think we are looking at the entire story, but we are looking at something which defines the character or defines the personality and gives the reader a chance to understand not just these people, but also what is happening around them.
Yes, Gautam, that's a very interesting point. That's a very accurate point as well. Coming to you, Ramesh ji, you've written the biography of a leader who was one of the tallest leader in Andhra. And how do you write, or let me ask you, how do you approach the political biography of such large, such popular mass leaders? Because you also have to now assess their legacy, because they are no longer around. So you have to also, let's say, pass judgment upon their political life. And that is something which becomes very difficult because his supporters, his fan following, his family, his party might take offense at it. So how do you maintain the delicate balance of writing the political biography and also assessing the political legacy of the politician?
Exactly, Abhinavji. Not only that, he was an actor, he was a politician. See, Gautamji wrote a book on an actor and then a politician. But here in my case, the man he was an actor, a very great actor in Telugu, who also became a politician. So I had to deal with two different fields actually, but my focus was on his political life, basically. Now, NTR, as you know, people know that, that cliche. You can like him or dislike him, but you cannot ignore him. NTR was such a personality. People loved him, adored him, but there were also people who did not like his histrionics, his dramatics, and politics. So when you are dealing with such a personality, it is really very critical that you are very objective, because there is every chance of offending both the sides. People who really adore him and also people who see a lot of shortcomings in that man. So I try to be objective as far as possible. And another problem for me was that even though NTR passed away some 25 years back, his party is still alive. TDP is an important party in Andhra Pradesh. And as you know, it was NT Ramarao who actually changed the course of the history of United Andhra Pradesh. And because of his initiative at launching a regional party, that today in both the Telugu states, that is Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, we still have regional parties ruling. So it was NTR who actually, I think, laid the seeds for this kind of political culture in Telugu states. And apart from being a leader of the United AP, he also played an important role at the national level. So it was my actually objective that I should actually bring out this aspect of NTR also, that though he came on the plank of regional aspirations I mean, the rights of the states, those were his ideals. But the interesting thing was that NTR played a very key role in building National Front in the late 80s to take on the Congress party at the time. So it's very interesting to see how a man who actually came on the slogan of Telugu self-respect actually ended up building a coalition at the national level by bringing together at that point of time the left as well as the right. That is the CPI and CPM and also the BJP. I don't think many people in the country actually know that for the first time, after the Janta experiment by Jayaprakash Narayan, it was in 1983 that you could have seen both Jyoti Basu and other left leaders, as well as leaders of BJP like Vajpayee and Advani on the same platform. That happened in 1983 after NTR started building this coalition. He was the one who hosted this meeting in Vijayawada at that time, and subsequently, there were a lot of these conclaves held everywhere across the country, and he was successful in building National Front. So these are the kind of aspects that I wanted to highlight through my biography. As you rightly said, not many people are aware of the contributions of several leaders from different parts of the country, especially from the south. So it was my intention to really focus light upon the aspects that were not very widely known to people.
Yes, Ramesh, but let me ask you a second question. When we talk about the political biographies, the attention is mostly on the national level leaders, the people who have entered the national politics or who become prime ministers or who have held powerful positions at the center. But as you pointed out, that the regional leaders or the state leaders are also very powerful actor, very important actor in the Indian polity. Why don't we have much information available on them? Is it the question of the language, that you have the Indian languages versus English language tussle, that lots of material on leaders like Ramarao will be in the Telugu, which is not accessible to the wider audience? Or is it because of simply the balance of power, that people don't take state level leaders that seriously, because we don't have very good biographies, or many biographies even of Mulayam Singh Yadav coming from like this North India? So what is the reason out there?
No, as you said, I think it was the disinterest generally shown by the Delhi-based, I think, the newspapers or television channels, whatever. In fact, in the 1980s, I remember India Today wrote at that point of time that when National Front was formed, they said it was India's show all the way. I don't think anybody actually knows now that it was India who contributed much to the formation of National Front. I certainly think that there is, I would not say discrimination, but I think there is some kind of indifference to the role played by a lot of leaders from, not only from the South, also from the other parts of the country. One reason could be because most of these people actually, they are regional leaders. They do all their work in their respective regions and states. And there is a lot of connect between the people and the leader in these regional parties, if you observe. It's actually more than what you expect from the national leaders. Everywhere, whether it's MGR or NTR or even Lalu Prasad Yadav, the kind of command they have over the people is something very different actually compared to the national leaders. But somehow, because they, I think, focus very much on their own states, their role at the national level also sometimes gets glossed over. I'm sure a lot of leaders from the regional parties, they played quite a big role in shaping some of the national policies as partners in the central government. But I don't think it gets really highlighted. It's because I think they themselves wouldn't be interested in highlighting those kind of things. Their focus all the time is only on their states. They are always, I think, trying to appeal to the electorate back home only, unlike the national leaders, who I think take a holistic approach, trying to impress the people across the country. That's one thing. And secondly, as you said, see, because a lot of things are written in regional languages about these regional leaders, I think they somehow they get buried. Unless you have material available in English, it's really very difficult to write a biography in English. And not many people would be interested. See, if you write a biography, frankly, of a regional leader, there is a lot of hesitation on the part of even publishers, whether it will actually have any takers in the country. Because we are such a, I think, divided people in the sense that we are actually not bothered as to what's happening in our neighboring state. We are only focused on the state in which we are living in, or only what's happening in Delhi.
Agreed, Ramesh. So
there's nothing in between.
Yeah. So recently we had the birth anniversary of Kanshi Ram, the man who changed the politics of the entire North India.
Yeah.
But we don't have many political biographies of him showing different aspects of his political career and his life. Ramvilas Paswanji died, who was a permanent fixture in the Delhi politics for decades. We don't have any political biography of him either. So is it the question of archival material? And Gautam, I'm coming to you with that. When you were writing the biography of Rajnath Singh, what challenges did you face? Because from where do you get the archival material? Because, and this is a problem with Indian politicians as well. They don't write much. They don't leave behind them a proper writing or archival material. So how did you go about that? How did you gather the information? Or did you depend on the access to the politician, which will then make the biography one-sided?
So my first port of call, of course, was Rajnath ji, and I was very fortunate that he participated in it in the manner of speaking that he really opened up and spoke about a lot of facets which were not available in public domain. But there is enough material out there, may not be in the classical sense of archival material, but there is enough that can get a biographer started depending on what exactly they are looking at. But it's very interesting that what Ramesh ji was saying, and this is something that I also experienced during my writing of the Rajesh Khanna biography, many people who have made a very big impact don't believe that their work is over, which otherwise translates that they don't want to talk about it because it is something that they also consider to be a work in progress. So for my Rajesh Khanna book, there were many instances where people didn't take the material that I was seeking seriously enough in terms of archiving it. But when it comes to the political biography or the genre of political biography in India, I think the what Ramesh ji said, taking a little bit from that, I feel that initially, up until say the mid 90s or the early 1990s, Hindi or the heartland dominated so much when it came to political calculations that everything else paled. Uh, Once we have the economic liberalization, once we start opening up and the world shrinks in that aspect, English becomes the aspirational language. So everything is dictated by the English press. Now, what is interesting is that in N.T. Ramarao's case, like Ramesh ji was saying, many of us don't know that he was in fact the architect of the third front, or he was actually somebody who changed the way, and he's a precursor to Kashi Ramji, how he changed the way political calculations are looked at. But what is interesting is that he is also the first political uh, personality who proved psephologists wrong on every platform. Nobody gave him an outside chance of even winning some seats in Andhra, where he changed the course of the undivided Andhra's history. So I'm amazed that even now, after 40, 45 years, when we think of psephologists or we think of exit polls, we don't look at the impact that NTR had on the psyche of the voter, and we don't take that into consideration. Now, challenges for a biographer will always be there. Sometimes it is also important to decide what you want to leave out as opposed to putting in, because it is the story that you're telling and how much of it comes into play. For me, I left out a lot of things which I felt that may not add to the greater picture. For me, writing on Rajnath Singh was also trying to write about a huge uh, segment of Indian polity which never got its due in terms of being spoken about, simply because it was the opposition. So there is a saying in Hindi, na, "Jo jeeta wahi Sikandar." So you want to look at who won and how did they win. But the fact is that people don't usually lose elections. They may not pass the post, but they also form a huge amount of interest, and they represent a considerable chunk of the people. So unfortunately, till now, like you said, there was nothing on Mulayam Singh Yadav. There is very little on Kashi Ram. Considering what contributions MGR made or NTR made, we really don't know about them. And that is why I feel that in this aspect, Dhaval's book is very, very important, because it is something which not only charts the course of history, but it is also a work in progress. And similarly, Hindol's book revives the look, the perspective to look at somebody who was a mainstream politician, but not the spotlight. So when you look at Sardar Patel or when you look at Pandit Nehru, you suddenly see that there is so much about Sardar Patel which never gets mentioned. Now, in the same aspect, in my Rajnath Singh book, I also write a lot about Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, because in order to understand what is happening today, you also need to understand where these guys came from. And something that Ramesh ji mentioned, to sum up what I'm saying, is that regional leaders play a very significant role. And one such regional leader who is now playing a very vital role at the national level is Narendra Modi. As a 3-time chief minister, the kind of policies that Mr. Modi introduced, or the kind of interaction that Mr. Modi had with the center, also plays a huge role in the way he has laid out the policies.
Agreed. So it's the access to archival material, written material is always tough in India, because perhaps we are an oral civilization to a great extent. But Dhavalji, coming to you, when you're writing the biographies or accounts of the politicians who are still active in the political life, as a journalist, what constraints are placed upon you? Because the politicians can cut off access if they don't like what you write, or it might be just a simple journalistic coverage as compared to wider socio-economic analysis of their politics and their party. So how do you try to get around it and write as much objectively as you can?
Well, Abhinavji, this is a professional hazard, because there's something called, because I am saying this from the point of view of a beat reporter, because when I wrote the Cousins Thackeray, I was covering the Shiv Sena and MNS beat. So there's something called the predicament of beat reporters who want to write books on the subject that they cover, because they face a very peculiar problem. They must either pen an authorized account or at least frame the narrative in a manner that does not rub too many people in the wrong way. Of course, there's a problem where some reporters may get into a comfort zone and with the political parties and the leaders that they write about. And I'm sorry if I sound slightly harsher, but there are times when the reporters actually start sounding like the leaders of the political parties that they cover. So, for instance, the reporter who covers the Congress beat may sound like a Congress leader, a BJP beat reporter may sound like a BJP neta, so on and so forth. But in case the book or the writings of a beat reporter, they cut too close to the bone, as you rightly pointed out, there is the chance of burning their bridges with the subjects, which, as any beat reporter knows, may be a nasty bump in their careers. So, for instance, if I, as a beat reporter, I write a book on a personality that I cover, and if he does not like it, there's a strong chance that he may restrict or even block access to me. My boss or my bureau chief may not be concerned so much at me writing one book or 10 more, but he has to produce the daily newspaper. So naturally, if I start missing stories on my beat left, right, and center, it is but obvious that he may read out the riot act to me, and rightly so. But there, of course, was a time. I'll tell you about my predicament when I was writing the Cousins Thackeray. See, my book was the first unofficial, unauthorized political biography of Uddhav and Raj Thackeray. This was an omnibus biography of the two leaders who, as everyone knows, are not on the same page at a political and personal level. So, as a biographer and writer, it was but natural that I should contact them for their side of the story instead of letting my book be a very ad hominem kind of an exercise. My concern was that what if one of them agrees to speak to me and the other does not? Then will the narrative feel slightly slanted, and what if this access comes with strings attached? Of course, eventually none of the two spoke to me, so my predicament did not manifest itself, thankfully. The other issue was, and I think I have tackled it in a slightly efficient and professional manner, was that of striking a balance between these two warring netas. In such cases where a biographer is writing on two personalities or leaders who are at loggerheads, one may tend to lose balance. But plus again, there's the predicament of a beat reporter. Because if you're writing offend someone, you actually run the risk of being cut off by them. So there are too many. I mean, they're professional hazards. One has to work one's way around them.
So Rameshji, Dhavalji has made a very interesting point that people taking offense at what you are writing, and we are a republic of hurt sentiments anyways. And especially when you're writing on the state leaders, and as the Indian politics is, Indian society is, most of these leaders are also associated with one or the other caste. So if you write something not so good about them, you face problem because the caste certain sentiments might get hurt. Or you're writing about some other politician who is the opponent of the person whose biography you are writing. So my question to you is, how much restraint do you exercise when you are writing the political biographies? Because then that has the impact on, can the entire story ever be told? And how do you balance between myth versus reality? Because every politician has a myth associated with himself, or his caste community,
most of India
party has it. So how do you balance it out?
Yeah. First of all, can the entire story ever be told? To that question, I would say, actually, do we need to tell the entire story? I mean, what do we mean by the entire story in the first place, and what actually constitutes the entire story? These are some questions I think that will arise. I don't think it's actually necessary to really cover the entire story. I mean, real life will not be as interesting as the life in the fiction. So there will be so many, I think, so much of time, so many events and incidents that actually may not make much sense to the story that you are telling. So I think you will have to really choose what you want to tell. But of course, you will have to maintain a balance, and because your idea is to actually to introduce the personality, try to bring out the essence of a personality. So whatever actually helps to bring out that essence of the personality, good or bad, both, those are, I think, the things that you should actually focus on. That's one thing. And secondly, now about offending people. Yes, NTR passed away long back, so he wouldn't be offended. But the problem is his party is still alive and kicking. There are all a divided lot. There is a question of whether his son-in-law Chandrababu Naidu, did he backstab NTR or not? That's a big question. And there is another son-in-law who is now with another party that is opposed to TDP. Now India's daughter is with BJP. So the entire family is actually now divided, and they support different parties, and some of them are opposed to TDP because it's led by Chandrababu Naidu. So these are all very complicated issues for me when I was dealing with it. But and his wife Lakshmi Parvati, his second wife, she is still alive. She is now with a party that's actually opposed to TDP. She is actually playing a role there. What I tried in my book was that you should give everybody's version first, and then see whether it makes any sense. What they're saying actually, does it really make any sense? Number one, is it justified or not? Because we have the benefit of hindsight now. So from now you can look back and whether it's what they did at that point of time in 1995 when they dethroned India. That is one of the biggest chapters in India's life, that he was dethroned when he was the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, and his son-in-law became not only the CM but also actually became the leader of the party, as most of the people know. I think to some extent I was successful in that, though I was not trying to please anybody. That one of the sons-in-law, for example, he actually called me up and confessed that what he did in 1995 was wrong. He said, after reading the book once again, I now feel, I now can say openly that I committed a mistake in 1995 when I opposed my father-in-law and joined hands with Chandrababu Naidu, his co-brother, if I can call him like that. So what is important, I think, is that you should incisively look at the role of each player, including your protagonist, that's NTR in my case. After going through the book, see, there is this risk of actually exaggerating the importance of your subject when you are writing a biography. That danger always lurks in the backdrop. Whether he is so great that just because you are writing a book on him, on a personality, does it mean that you have to really make him very big than he actually was? While actually researching, you might find out things that may not make him the great leader that he was thought to be. So these are some of the issues I think that you will have to confront. The best thing is to be honest in assessment of the personality that you are writing. Because as I said, it's inherently built that there is a danger of exaggerating the subject of your book.
Gautam, this is a very important point, the danger of making your subject appear larger than life when you're writing a political biography. And when you talk about the biographies, we also have the filmmaking as well. So there are films on the political leaders as well. So how do you rate filmmaking versus books as a political biography of a political leader? Because, and also because the publishers also want sensationalism. They want some kind of sensation, whether it's the movie or the book, and because that sells the book or the movie. So how do you look at this entire thing, the book versus the film?
So I think that in a country like ours, where either it's these three factors, cricketers, politicians, or film stars, and you may find all three in them in some cases, but I think the need to highlight certain aspects of your subject is common not only in a book but also in a film. And also at the end of the day, you can be far more critical in a book because it's long form than in a film. So for me, I never had the risk of making my subject larger than what he was in both cases, in Rajesh Khanna's case as well as in Rajnath ji's case. Because in Rajesh Khanna's case, I was going back in time and trying to look at something where, uh, for me, he was always the guy who did something first, but could never enjoy the benefits of that beyond a point. Because if you see him playing elderly roles at 40, he played a grandfather in Avatar, whereas Amitabh Bachchan and the other contemporaries were still doing the regular thing. He also played the elder guy much earlier than Mr. Bachchan, but he joined politics, which is very interesting because he took on Lal Krishna Advani in Delhi and then later took on Shatrughan Sinha in the same constituency. For me, Rajnath Singh himself was very clear in how he looks at his role in the grand scheme of things. For Rajnath Singh ji, politics is more of a social activity and trying to bridge the gap between the have and have-nots, which is something that he has maintained through the course of his life. So for me, that became the aspect of the hero. There is a lot of sensationalism in any politician's life if you look at their lives closely enough. But it depends on the story that you're telling, that you can balance the sensationalism, the fabrication, and the myths. It is right that somebody would say that you run the risk of looking at them in a different light. Or in Rajesh Khanna's case, I realized that he's been underrated throughout the time that he was alive in terms of what he has achieved post the juggernaut, the Rajesh Khanna phenomenon that he was. So for me, it was the underdog story in some cases. Here it was a story that never really was told the way it could have been told, because there is somebody who played a great role and he's one of the few stalwarts left in national politics right now. But when it comes to sensationalism, it's always a call that you can take. You can always underplay or overplay something. That aspect of the publisher asking you for something which can be pegged immediately, or the newspaper guy is asking you for an extract that is really kuch masala de do humko. That's what they say. You can tread that path. It's completely up to you. But I think as long as there are people who are going to consume television news or newspaper articles or anything, you would want that X factor to hook them. For us, when we are writing on these subjects, it's their life or certain aspects which automatically becomes the X factor. Maybe not so much for the publisher, but I feel that of late there has been enough sensibility in the publisher, because they have seen the audience feedback or the reader feedback, and they have now understood that sensationalism may make a splash, but it may not go beyond a point. And I think the legacy of archiving contemporary politics or even contemporary arts and culture and looking at it from a perspective that it is a work in progress and also defines us is coming back into fashion, and more power to the reader and the audience for that.
Gautam. And also, audience, you can also send us your questions for the panelists. So I think I'll take up one question which has come, and this is for you, Dhaval, and also for the other panelists. Could you name a political biography you deem has achieved the feat of telling the entire story? And why do you think that it did so? So do you have some, basically this is asking that what is the gold standard of political biography according to you, Dhaval?
There's some political biographies that I have liked personally. One is Vinay Sitapati's Half Lion of Narasimha Rao, because I feel he's one very ignored politician. I mean, he was the architect of India's economic liberalization, but unfortunately, even his party has not given him the due that it deserved. The second biography that I liked was Hindoo's biography of Sardar Patel. So, because Sardar Patel also was India's Bismarck. I mean, he was the man who ensured that all these 565 odd princely states became part of the Indian Union. So, these are the two biographies that I like. But personally, Vinodji, I feel that there's, as you rightly pointed out at the beginning of this session, there are certain political personalities who deserve good biographies, but unfortunately, they don't have one. And the one, as you rightly pointed out, is Ramvilas Paswan, who was a permanent fixture in whichever government came to power. The second personality, whom I feel needs to be written about in a very nuanced way is Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, because today we talk of anti-Congressism. It was Lohia who birthed the very idea of anti-Congressism, of standing up to the Congress at a time. It was striding the political arena as like a colossus. Another figure who deserves a good biography of his own is George Fernandez, the stormy petrel of India's politics. So again, I would say that political sort of genre of political biographies is something that is yet to come into its own in India. I mean, one reason could be, the explosion of the outrage industry, because you never know who is going to take umbrage at what. And unfortunately, the state government may succumb to pressure from these non-state actors. And this is a very sort of pernicious form of censorship that is being imposed in India. So, yes, I mean, this is a genre that needs to develop.
Yes, yes. Gautam, according to you, which is the gold standard for the political biography?
In the recent past, I will agree with Dhaval that Vinay Chapati's book on Narasimha Rao was indeed an eye-opening account for a lot of people who were not around at that time, who do not understand the magnanimity of what Mr. Rao achieved, and the fact that there are so many of us who knew back before and after Wala picture. So for us to see the way he managed to capture it was fantastic. I think outrage industry will always be there. But I am not so worried about that beyond the point, because there are issues, there are problems that people will have. There are disagreements within a family. So when you're going out to public, there will always be like that. But I feel that in the recent past, many political biographies have been welcomed directly or indirectly, even by the subjects who may not have participated in the storytelling effort, because at the end of the day, these are tales which need to be told. And one example we have right now is Dhaval, because neither Raj Thackeray nor Uddhav participated in the writing of the book, but they still deserve to be spoken about. And in that aspect, I think that we are in the midst of a time where the genre of political writing will actually come into its own. And more than just a biography, I am also very excited about the times that we are in, that people and publishers will be okay with the idea of, looking at certain events in history and resting the spotlight on them, as opposed to covering the entire story. Like Ramesh ji said, that do we even need to tell the entire story? Perhaps we do, perhaps we don't. But even if we look at certain events, then we can actually try and understand these personalities better, because actions do speak, much louder than words.
Ji, Gautam ji. So, Ramesh ji, apart from your excellent book on N.T. Rama Rao, what do you think is the gold standard for the political biography?
I really don't know whether there can be a gold standard as such. I would say, see, even when I Chitapati's book that the others were referring to, I've read it. Now, it brings out certain aspects which were not known in other parts of the country, but we had some good books in Telugu on P.V. Narasimha Rao actually. Even recently, there was a biography. So what actually matters is every book or any book, any biography that tries to bring out the hitherto unknown aspects of a personality, the hitherto unknown contribution of a personality into limelight. I think that itself, I think, is a great contribution to the writing of biography. So it need not be, I don't know whether it's a gold standard or not, but any book, I think that throws light on the subject and helps people understand the context and the importance of the personality, the context of the in which he or she operated, and also the impact that they have created and how it is relevant even today. These are some of the aspects I think that every biographer will have to grapple with, and the success I think depends on how much they are able to do in these, I think, areas.
Yes. So, and we have only 5 minutes left now. So I'm going to ask Another question to all the three panelists. Do political biographies also serve the function of a political propaganda? Or why do we have the biographies of a certain kind emerging in certain period, like the biography of Savarkar by Vikram Sampath, or the biography of Narasimha Rao? Why they're being written today? Why they were not written before the BJP came to power? Is there some political context to it? Are they political propaganda, or they simply in sync with their time that the audience is more receptive to learn more about those political leaders? So, Gautam, let's start with you.
I feel that the timing is always good. The fact that you could not write these things earlier can be attributed that they may not have been a market in the minds of the publisher, or perhaps you did not feel the need to write it because of a variety of reasons. There will always be something to be discovered and something to be rediscovered. The fact that we can write today and to use a term very loosely can also get away with a lot of things. I think that's a great thing. The fact that there is a certain sense of timing also has to do with the fact that you're trying to pitch a book to a publisher, and the publisher is only interested in numbers after a certain point. I mean, it's all fine, but at the end of the day, the book needs to sell, needs to make money, not only for itself, but also to blaze the path for somebody else. So if it is the 75th year of the Indian independence and you want to link something, there will always be these kind of things. But I think finally, we are in a space where we can look at contemporary history without rose-tinted glasses, is the biggest reason why we have more political biographies now than ever before. And I think we'll see more of them.
Yeah. Dhavalji, according to you, do biographies serve the purpose of political propaganda as well?
To an extent, yes. I mean, of course, if biographies are written as hagiographies, they serve a certain political purpose. But to an extent, I think the element of political propaganda, to an extent, of course, is embedded in any political biography, however clinical or dispassionate it may be. So that is but natural. But again, as as Gautam rightly pointed out, I mean, more the merrier. I mean, we need more political biographies. This genre actually needs to explode in a country like India. But again, I doubt if we could have work like Seymour Hersh's The Dark Side of Camelot on John F. Kennedy, the most charismatic presidents of America. I mean, I doubt if we could have something as hard-hitting as that in India. So again, I guess we'll have to work our way around it, because the society is undergoing a change, transition, etc. So maybe after some point things will settle down. So
okay, so Ramesh ji, when we talk about N.T. Rama Rao, about P.V. Narasimha Rao, another great politician which Andhra produced, why was his biography written now, not before? So why do you think that was the case?
There is a reason and a time, I think, for anything. As you rightly mentioned, the political climate, the changing political context, certainly, I think, goes a long way in bringing out such books. In my case, for example, I think there is this kind of feeling among Telugus, for example, that we don't have a tall leader like NTR who talked about Telugu nationalism, Telugu self-respect, those kind of things. And after the bifurcation of the United Andhra Pradesh into two states, I think to some extent Telugus have lost their identity. So I think there is some kind of context for that to probably evoke the memory of NTR, to feel nostalgic about what he did those days, how he brought attention to the Telugus for the first time by defeating the mighty Indira Gandhi. So there is certainly a context. Even in the case of P.V. Narasimha Rao, I think it's only after the BJP came into power that I think there was more focus on PV because of the criticism against the dynastic politics of Congress. Naturally, there was some interest in PV, how his contribution was not really recognized and was not given due credit. So I am 100% certain that it is the political climate and the context, political context that actually determines to a large extent in the writing of these biographies.
Yes. So, Gautam, can the entire story ever be told, especially when you're dealing with the episodes of controversy, personal life of a political leader?
I think it can be told. I think more than the subject, it's also the biographer who takes certain decisions. In my case, Rajnath ji was very open, very vocal, and he expressed whatever questions I had, he answered them. Certain decisions were taken by me that I did not want to focus on this aspect of, say, party politics or his life, but more on the contributions that he has made or what he has achieved, both while he was in power and while outside of power. So I think the entire story can be told. Now, there will be problems from either side, like Dhaval said, that there will be some outrage, and can we have a John F. Kennedy like a book, tell-all book? Maybe we can. Are we getting there? Perhaps we are. But I think the entire story can be told. Do you want to tell it or not? That's totally up to you.
Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions left, but final comments to Dhavalji and Rameshji, 1 minute each. Can the entire story ever be told? Dhavalji.
I think the essence, sorry.
No, please, Ramesh.
Yeah, I would say that the essence of the story is more important than the entire story, because the entire story is never ending. So I think you will have to focus on the essence of the personality or the events and the incidents that happen and make sense out of them. That's what is more important than actually trying to tell the entire story, which may not actually make any sense.
Yes. Dhavalji, final comment?
This is a very difficult question with some difficult answers, but I think the answer is both yes and no. It all depends on the discretion of the biographer. But again, I would like to point out that whenever biographies are written, they should not sort of divorce themselves from the social context of the personality they are based around. For instance, when it comes to writing on people like Mayawati or Kanchi Rama, or even someone like Bal Thackeray, we have to look at the social, economic, and political context as well, because one may or may not agree with their politics, but we must also acknowledge and understand that there is this genuine sense of discontent and social churn that they are trying to tap into. So I think that social context is as important as the topic of that biography.
Yes. So thank you, Dhavalji, and thank you, audience, for listening to this wonderful discussion. I hope that we covered lots of aspects of writing of a political biography. And at the end, to my panelists, Ramesh ji, Gautam, Dhaval ji, thanks a lot for wonderful insight and input. And thank you, Arth Cultural Fest. I hope you will continue to watch other sessions of this festival today as well as tomorrow. So thank you.